Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome producer, artist, songwriter, TV, and film composer Shay Watson. So, welcome, Shay.
Thanks for having me.
So, Shay, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you share with us how your journey started in the music industry?
Yes, it really started in the commercial music industry when I moved to Nashville, and that was in the late 90s.
Yes.
Previous to that, I was a music educator. I was a high school band director, and I taught all ages of music, but I also worked for a print music publishing company. This was in the 1990s, and we catered a little bit more to wind ensembles, to symphonic bands, things such as that. But I had a few friends that had encouraged me to move from the educational side of things to the commercial music industry. And
Yes.
these were old college buddies of mine that had already moved to Nashville, knowing that the music centers in the United States at the time were basically you were either going to move to Nashville, LA, or New York to if
Yes.
you were going to pursue a music career in the commercial music industry. So at the end of the school year, I made the move to Nashville, and I didn't know what I was going to encounter. I just knew that this is where music is done. So you
Yes.
need to be here, get your feet wet, look around, take everything in. And that's what I did. I crashed on a couch for a couple of months and
As one does.
started, yeah, as one does. And I started going out to different writers' nights. At the time, I still had a little bit of money that was coming in from the print music company that I was working for, and also I'd taken out some money against my teaching. So I had a few months that I could breathe easy and just take everything in.
Yes.
At the end of that time, when money starts running out, you have to
Yes. Panic
find
sets in.
way to, to pay the bills. So I got a job working at a university here in town, just doing some side stuff for the university. But while I was there, I saw this list of publishers, and I decided, hey, I'm going to start making some phone calls
Mm.
and just meeting people in the commercial publishing industry. And when I say commercial publishing industry, these were publishers that were looking for songwriters that were going to write hit songs for artists that they were going to pitch to.
Yes.
One of those publishing companies, one of them called me back and set up a meeting, and I went to it and played a few of the songs that I had written at the time, which I probably should not have played because, they always tell you give yourself 10 years in Nashville before you reach a level where you're writing something of a degree of competency. But I was a little bit eager, and so I played these skeletons of songs that I had, and the publisher that I was meeting with, he took a liking to me, and he took me under his wing and started educating me on the craft and art of songwriting. Later, a couple of years after we had been working together, he said, you know, there was nothing special about that first batch of songs that you brought in. You just had a very likable and teachable personality, and everyone, when you came in and played the songs, everybody wanted to hang with you. So,
Amazing. That's so
yeah,
great.
now the talent there was that degree of very raw, undeveloped talent that
Mm.
was there. But basically, I think the maybe personality got me in the door,
Yes.
but
Well,
I had to
that's
write.
also it. You can be a great songwriter or whatever, but at the end of the day, it also comes with personality and likability. So you're not just buying the person's skill, but you're buying the person or working with the person, and their
Absolutely.
personality. Yeah.
Absolutely. But you know, while I was there, while I was being educated on the craft of songwriting, I just immersed myself in it. I was up early in the mornings writing to now I was not a staff writer at the time. I was doing odd jobs around
Mm.
the publishing company just so I could hang out with the other writers there and observe. But what I began doing was just writing as much as I could from what I took in. I would be up early in the mornings before I worked a side job and
Mm.
writing, and then I would go there and probably write half the time when I was supposed to be working on the job. But then after afternoon, I'd cruise over to the publishing company, hang out with those guys, and I was always bringing in material.
Amazing.
And, soon I was just bringing in so much, material that, people started taking notice and looking, through it and through the improvement, level with it, and at that point, I was offered a staff writing deal. It's very I say staff writing deal, it sounds like a huge thing, but
Mm.
then for a young 20-something-year-old guy, it was a small stipend of money, and the publishing company basically said, "Hey, we're going to give you a tiny bit of money to get by, but we're going to produce the demos on these songs that we help you structure, and we're going to pitch them to artists." So I thought all of my dreams had come true at the time.
Wow.
Now, they hadn't, but, that was the stepping stone, because while I was at the publishing company, I met, another, co-writer who was around the same age of me, and we formed a band. We at first, we formed a duo, and we went out and we were playing acoustic shows. I was playing keyboards because I'm primarily a keyboard piano player. He was
Mm.
playing guitar, and we were both singing. And while we were out doing a little run in Louisiana, we wound up meeting another writer artist while we were down there that lived near New Orleans, and he wound up actually coming back to Nashville with us and crashing at my, duo partner's place, and suddenly we're a trio.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing.
now what's interesting about this group, this was what I would call my first successful band that allowed me to write for it, produce for it, perform, and learn all the moving parts. At first, when we started out, we were just accepting any gig we could. We were going out at the time as we were all three singers, so we had this tight harmony, almost if you think Beach Boys type harmony.
Oh, okay, amazing.
But we were playing, the instruments we were playing at the time was, 2 guitars and a piano, and we thought that's so boring. Let's restructure this
Yeah.
thing. So, one of the guitar players also played mandolin and banjo. So, he gets his mandolin and banjo, and we had that and guitars with a harmonica, and then over here was me
Mm.
with a keyboard. Like, okay, what are you gonna do with that? Okay, Shay, put the keyboard aside and go buy an upright bass.
Wow.
Suddenly, I become a bass player, and
Gee.
I'm very familiar with a lot of instruments. I would not have at the time called myself a bass player, but I did know, this how to play a guitar, so
Mm.
trans to a bass was not that hard. So, I switched playing upright bass and accordion. Now, that sounds almost like a bluegrass
Mm.
makeup to you of a band, but that's not what we were. We were actually a pop band that played acoustic instrument.
Yes.
It was one of those unique things that, allowed us to play at so many different, genres, so many different places to such a broad demographic. We were capturing teens because it was such a cool thing with these young 20-something-year-old guys coming in with acoustic instruments harmonizing. We were capturing the college crowd. We were able to go into colleges and play, but we were also able to get regional theaters and things that an older demographic would want to come and see. And that was one of the things that an early agent of ours had said, what is amazing about you guys is you have such a broad demographic. You look out at your audience and
Mm,
you'll see everything from 7-year-olds all the way to 70-year-olds and
that's
beyond
amazing.
out there. So the first year was a reformation year, but the second year of us touring, we were up to doing probably about 150 shows that second year, and we had
Wow.
honed everything in. Me and my duo partner, Jacob Wiley is his name. We had written most of the songs for the group. Cole Bruce was the other member. And during this time, I really got my feet wet also in producing. I had been in the studio, but when I was in at the publishing company, I had observed producers that were producing my song demos. So I knew how to structure songs to make them build from the beginning to the
Mm,
end, create that emotion. But out of necessity, we purchased our own studio gear because we're very prolific with the writing, and we began producing our own songs to take on the road and sell. And what is interesting about that is we did it in such a grassroots area that it began catching on. We had these pockets of the United States
wow.
that getting a lot of people coming out to our shows. We went from a regional act to becoming a national act. And then at that time, when we were reporting the sales that we were, that the music industry took notice of that. We had created.
Yes. Is that where, because obviously you're a platinum selling and Grammy nominated artist, so did that come into it at this point? Like, how
not
did that
not
achievement come into play?
It all ties in, but it didn't come in at that point. At the point in time that I'm talking about, this is early 2000s, around 2002,
Wow.
2000, which is, wow, about 20 something years ago now. Uh,
Yeah, one loses track of time.
yeah, one does. But we had at the time that the labels came to us, we had a staff of about 4 or 5 people that were working for us. We had
Mm,
a couple of booking agents that were handling different parts of the United States. We had a person who was doing our publicity. We also had a manager who was taking care of this for us. And at that point, when you're looking at sales and you're looking at a team, that's when the labels started coming to us. And we had about 3 or 4 label offers on the table. We wound up going with one of the labels. And that was, I won't say the name of it. They did have their distribution through one of the majors here in town. They were an imprint of one of the majors, so to speak. But we signed with them because of the creative control issue. We still wanted to maintain a lot of creative control,
yeah, which
but
is so important.
yeah, very important. But as you find out, you will be told that you have a lot of creative control.
Yeah, but
But
it's not always the case.
that was the situation with us, and I completely see it sitting on this side of the fence 20 something years later. They were investing, $1.5 million into us. So
Mm,
creative control sounds like a great thing until you start looking at frameworks of what has worked before. And okay, these guys are great. They've been making all their money off of their shows. They've been doing TV appearances. They've been doing theaters. But in order for us to make back this huge investment, in order for us to promote them to the masses, we're going to have to hit radio. We're going to have to get bigger shows besides the uh smaller ones and opening spots they're doing. So we need to change some things. Uh
Yes.
and at that point, that's when the whole makeup and view of the band of what it looked like that people loved and bought into began to change. And that actually started the end of the band for us. Now,
Mm,
that sounds bad, but it was actually wound up being a good thing in hindsight,
mm, mm.
because the demise, so to speak, of the band is what prompted me to refocus for a while almost solely on production. and
Yes.
and it was great being out playing, trying out songs in front of people, making a living doing that, but it can be very tiring because in the end we were doing about 250 shows per year. There's always this constant dangling of a carrot in front of you of
Oh
the
yeah. And you've got to sift out what's
yeah
real
the
and what's
next
not.
yeah exactly next bigger thing that you have to do. And looking back on it, it was a great experience. It allowed me to look into the music industry, but also another thing, this is where you ask about Grammy nominated acts. While I was on the road playing with my band, 10 Mile Drive was the name of the band, by the way, we're opening for much larger bands. We were also becoming friends with artists and bands that we were on the same tour circuit with. And I became friends with a number of lead guys in different bands. And it wasn't because I was looking for, a stepping stone in the music industry. It's just because we were all out doing our thing, having a great time together and making authentic friendships.
Mm,
One of those bands that I worked with that gave me one of my first major cuts was a group called Sidewalk Prophets. And,
wow.
the story with Sidewalk, and this is an interesting story. When 10 Mile Drive ended, when we lost the record deal, I went through about a year to where I was depressed over that.
Mm.
You're what you've
Because
been
you've
doing.
given so much of your life and so much of
Good
your
given
time.
4 to 5 years of touring and investing in this thing, and in the end, even had we tried to continue as we would not have been able to, because we had signed contracts and people had ownership. So even if we wanted to continue to perform together, financially, it wouldn't be feasible. So during that downtime, it was when I had began writing with some of these artists that I'd played on with, Sidewalk Prophets being one of them. And they were brought in to play some shows with us through our management.
Mm,
And I continued on after the band ended with the management company that we had signed with. They just kind of shifted to representing me as a producer and songwriter.
mm,
So we began doing music from the time that they were off the road, and they were also entertaining a new deal with Word Music slash Capital. Right now, I think Capital still handles the songs that we did during that time. There have been so many buyouts through the years of labels
yeah, no,
by
it's changed.
now. Yeah,
It's
that gets mixed up at this time. But so during that year when I was restructuring, I was writing with them. I was writing with also artist named James Clay, who was on the M Pop label, Michael Tate, who is lead singer now of the Newsboys. At the time, he was in a group. He had just finished up with a group called DC Talk. I met him through James Clay and another artist that I knew from the group Salvador.
mm,
And so we were writing all of these songs. Well, at the end of about a year and a half period, I'd made that shift from the road artist to the guy who was songwriter, producer, still an artist, but just navigating, but kind of
But you'd
staying
also
put.
expand your skill set, right? I mean, in the music industry by doing that. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I had another buddy of mine who had just landed a label deal and knew that I was not playing on the road. He gave me a call and said, "Hey Shay, I want you to come out and play keys for me and sing background vocals." So we went on the road, did a few shows, but amidst that, I wound up getting some type of viral infection that knocked me out for, gosh, it was a period of months. I couldn't sing. I was just so tired. And during that time, I got a call from the guys in Sidewalk Profits. And they said, Shay, we just landed a bigger deal here. We're doing our first major release of an album, and we want you to write toward it.
amazing.
Now, I want you to picture this whole scene. So I was sick. I had this virus, and also at the time, because all the money from touring had run out, we wound up having to sell our home at the time. And we had moved into, my wife and I had moved into this one bedroom apartment. Also, this is another little funny thing. A storm had come through right around the time Sidewalk called me, and a tree fell on my car. So literally,
Oh no,
stuck in this
crazy.
tiny one bedroom apartment and I can't even go anywhere. And I said, guys, I would absolutely love to write with you for this project, but you're going to have to come to me.
Yes,
So I actually did. They came over and we sat on the back balcony of this little tiny apartment that we were living in facing the woods, and we wrote several songs that went on that album.
that's
That album,
amazing.
they were nominated for New Artist of the Year with the Dove Awards. We wrote one of the songs in particular off that album was very meaningful to me, and it was called Moving All the While. And it's a very meaningful journey type song, life journey type song. And that song in particular, uh, I would tell you a little side story. About 5 or 6 years after the success of that album, I had been asked to play a writer's round. You oftentimes professional writers who have had song cuts in Nashville, they'll get asked to join other writers in a round. They call it a writers round, and
Okay.
people listen to you play both your hit songs and other songs that you've written that people may not have heard. So I was on one of those rounds, and I would say I wasn't the small guy on the food chain at that point, but I was somewhere mid grade, and we had some established riders, me and some riders who had some stuff going on but hadn't quite reached up here to this level yet. And so we were coming around, and I thought I'm going to play Moving All the While. It's known in certain circles, and it was successful on the album. It was still a B-side cut, but it's very meaningful to me. So when it got to my turn, I began playing, and I looked over, and one of the more established riders wanted him, and I looked for him, and I thought, well, this is interesting. I wonder what's going on there. You're singing the song, and then he started mouthing the words when we got to the chorus. And I thought, okay, well, he's heard me already sing the chorus once. He's just singing along, creating harmony, because you often in a writer's round, you start singing along with the other writers when you catch on to the song. But the song comes to a close and there's a pause,
Mm.
and it's his turn next. And he said, before I play this next song, I just want to take a moment. I had no idea that you were the guy that wrote that song. And
Wow, that's
tells me,
amazing.
he says, about 3 years ago, I went, I had a very, very hard time. I went through one of the nastiest divorces that you could imagine, and I was suicidal. And
Wow.
a friend of mine sent me the Sidewalk Prophets album, the CD, and said, I want
Wow.
you to listen to this song that's on the album. It wasn't their radio hit. It was just one of the B-side songs that was on the album. And he said, listen to that song. And he said, I played that song over and over. And that song walked me back from the edge. And that's one of the,
Wow, that's amazing, Shay. That's really amazing.
and it's those moments right there that reminds you why you really do what you do. I mean,
Yes.
it's those things that get you through tough
Yes.
times. Realizing that, wow, I'm not just chasing after the dollar with these songs. I'm really making a difference in
Mm.
people's lives. So that was an introduction, how I transitioned from the road to writing with some of these artists that are more known artists. And really, once you start having those successes, they somewhat just multiply for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. That's amazing.
Also, during this time, I had a person that I had met, a young artist, songwriter who had approached me actually when he was, I believe, at the end of his high school years, and had asked me to look at a few of his songs. And I had encouraged him. We had lost touch for a few years, and after he had finished college, he moved to town, and we linked back up and began writing together and playing, and we formed a duo, a country rock duo. So this was sort of a second run for me. And I was
Mm.
a little bit older at this point. Joe Nash is the name of my duo partner in this. We had began playing when he was in his early 20s, and at this point, I think I was already 30. But we
Mm.
decided to go back on the road and to see if we could do a run. And so we played a few shows together, and they were successful. So we thought, okay, well, let's approach my management and booking and see if we can get a number of gigs lined up. So we began touring regionally and then again nationally, and working on an album together that we could take out and sell with our other merch. Well, while we were writing the album, I need to step back a little bit here. A lot had changed from that time in the 1999 when I toured with 10 Mile Drive to the time when I was off the road in around 2006. During this time was when Napster had began and then merged into iTunes and started overtaking the music industry to where albums weren't selling as much. So when we came
Yes.
to do this second run, I noticed, wow, our album sales, they're just not selling like you had anticipated, like I was used to back in the old days. So I
Yes.
began talking to other artists who all echoed the same sentiment. Yeah, album sales are down. It's just like iTunes has hurt us a lot from the respect of just selling product. Now it's helped the artists in the manner of getting people out to shows because it provides you for an atmosphere to advertise your music. But on the flip side of that, it's very hard to survive off of just streaming and shows on their own. But so I say that to say something clicked within me that said, okay, we can't just rely on the old method. Any songs we do for this album, we need to be attaching them to things. We
Yes. That makes
we need to be
sense.
attaching them to products. We need to be attaching them to causes. We need to be attaching to several different things. We need to find things that we are passionate about to attach these two. We had a song called Last Man Standing that supported our soldiers. We had a song called Little Soldier, which helped support childhood sicknesses and things such as that, that we were able to benefit those causes. But one of the ideas that we had was, football here in the States, our form of
Mm,
football,
mm.
huge. So Joe and I got to talking, and I said, why don't we write a song on this album that is going to be played at sporting events everywhere? So we will have
Yes.
to build an audience. If we write this song that can be used at sporting events, we can find teams in different areas, both pro, college, and even high school, and we can go and do shows in those towns and in those arenas. So we wrote this song called Bring It On, which was a very just aggressive football song. We also did a NASCAR version, and I think we did a baseball version of it, but the football version was the one that was on the album. We wrote that along with songwriter Bill White, who's a very popular songwriter, country songwriter. And we released that. Well, what wound up happening was it went beyond just us being able to use that to find gigs and to get sales off the novelty of the football. It got picked up by first Fox Sports,
Oh,
and then
wow.
it was licensed by ESPN, and which were two major sports networks here in the States. So they began using the song. We had licensed it to them, and I saw the success and the notoriety that this song was using. I think they were using it on College Game Day
Mm,
for a while on television. And that sparked something in me, because when I looked and started seeing, wow, from a perspective of synchronizing these songs to TV,
mm,
this is a major area of income that we have tapped into.
mm.
And that reminded me of a friend that years ago, during the early days of our time in Nashville, he had moved out to LA and started writing for TV and film, and was always on me saying, hey, you need to get into writing, trying to license these songs to television. And I did take him serious. I knew this was a thing that was happening, but my view of what an artist songwriter did was you write songs, you tour the songs, and or you pitch the songs to other artists, get them on albums, and this is the way you make your money. But the ESPN Fox thing
Mm.
opened me up to say, hey, here's a revenue stream, and this makes more money than if you wrote a song and got it on an album.
Yeah, no,
So you need to
absolutely.
shift your attention over here. So
Yeah.
I used to Bring It On as a door opener. And I
Yes.
started cold calling people that I knew were involved in TV and film, to
Mm.
just begin to investigate and see what's going on here. How can I get my feet in this world? And what happened in that process, I wound up meeting a lady who has been in the industry for over 30 years. Beth Wernick is her name, and she took a look at my back catalog and said, "Hey, I can actually pitch a lot of this stuff to some of the TV shows that I'm
Mm.
tapped into, maybe some of the movies." And she began pitching them. One of my first we call them placements, when you have a pre-existing song and get it placed on the show. It's called a
Mm.
sync placement, synchronization placement, was on a show on Nickelodeon called Hollywood Heights. And the supervisor that had placed the song was Paul Antonelli, who has now become a good friend of mine. Paul, a little side note with him, he was in the 80s band Animotion, who had the big hit You're My Obsession, which was a huge 80s song. But he had gotten into the television sync world. He was a music supervisor there. Well, he was also working on a daytime drama, The Young and the Restless.
Yeah, we know. The young
And
and the
so
restless.
that's where I had my first big introduction to TV and film, because what happened was Paul took my catalog through Beth over to Sony Music TV and Film and CBS,
Mm,
and started looking through it. But they found out, it's through conversation,
mm.
that I'm a multi instrumentalist and I have my own studio, so I
Wow.
can create on demand. So what began happening was I would get phone calls to, "Hey Shay, do you do jazz?" Well, yeah, I do jazz. I mean, back when I was in college, I was a music major and I played in the jazz bands there. We had a huge jazz department, so I'm very fluent in jazz. So I would do jazz for dinner scenes. And then I would get requests, "Hey, if you're in Nashville and you're sitting in a restaurant and jukebox comes on, what would you hear playing there? Can you create it something like?" So I would shift over here and create Americana country type thing. But then it was, the show mirrors life. So
Mm,
where all music would pop, rock. And what was happening was it became evident to everyone that I could shift between genres very quickly and could play every instrument, because I've played a variety of instruments since I was a kid. Since I was a kid,
amazing.
from piano, drums, guitar, bass, brass, any instrument you can name. I just loved instruments and pick them up and try to master every instrument. And I'm proficient at most instruments. So I was able to do quick turnarounds on all of these different scenes and get it into the catalog. And that's when the phone calls really started coming. I started having placements almost every other day on Young and the Restless at the time. I still work with the guys over there.
Mm.
This is probably 2011 was my first year having placements on that show. And so now here we sit in 2024.
Yeah.
But but that Hollywood Heights and Bring It On opened up this whole discussion to where I was then able to I was getting notice, and I started getting outside calls from companies that dealt with both TV and movie scores. And I was getting these phone calls. So I started writing for shows like Homicide Hunter, which is on Discovery networks. And then that went into me writing music for Wives with Knives, and then Snapped Killer Couples and
Wow.
Tories, which are huge shows on Discovery Channel, doing those, and then began doing shows for Animal Planet and then A&E, and it just sort of blew up from
Yeah,
there.
snowballed from there.
Yeah, snowball from there. But walking it back, all of that, the whole lead up to getting here, my transition from road to studio to trying the artist thing again, and that actually not mushrooming into a big record deal, but instead mushrooming into something much bigger for me. That's when you ask, how did you step into that? That's how I stepped into this world of TV and film.
That's amazing. So I want to kind of fast forward to the pandemic, which obviously turned our worlds upside down and inside out over the past few years.
Yeah,
So
I did.
how did this personally and professionally impact your business? And what were some of the things you did to get through and keep your business going?
It
And I
was
mean, I'm sure there's loads of things that happened over that period,
yes.
but what are the things that really
Yeah,
stand out for you?
the major things for me in 2020, none of us, as you know, the world, we just didn't realize that we were going to be shut down to
Yeah.
the extent that we were. I guess during those early days when they began shutting everything down, production was shut down on a number of things that we were working on. Weinar, which had become one of my stable sources of income, was completely shut down production wise, and they started doing reruns of past shows. So that took out a huge amount of income for me. There were a couple other movie things I was working on at the time. I had done some music, songs actually, not score, but some songs for the movie Cats and Dogs, Paul's Unite. It was a more teen oriented movie, but in the Cats and Dogs series, which was a popular movie series that we were going to do a theatrical release on, that I was kind of counting on. Pandemic, obviously, with everything shutting down, we had to renegotiate contracts there and go straight to Blu-ray and DVD and licensing to streaming platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, streaming does not
Yeah, it
make the
doesn't
money.
pay.
Yeah, yeah, it really doesn't. Those were two major areas. And how this affected me personally is when everything shut down, relief that a lot of people were able to get, people in my position were not able to. I had friends during this time who, it was very tough for everyone. It was
Mm.
tough for gig workers, but it was easier for them to get money if they could show they were used to making a certain amount during this time and it was all taken away and it was under a certain amount, then government was allowing you to sign up and get finances to float you during this time, which is great for everyone. But for a person in my position, how TV and film works is you'll get your placement and you will wait 9 months to be paid, well, 6 to 9 months, because of the way that royalties work. You find out that you have placement. You fill out the paperwork during the specific quarter when it's released. It shows, and then it has to go through the process of your performing rights organization. Then 6 months later, 2 quarters later, depending on when you filled out the paperwork, then your royalties come in.
Mm.
Well, when I went to try to get relief for my situation, it looked like on paper that I had money coming in. So, okay, why are we going to give this guy any relief? He's got money coming in. And the reason I say this is not a complaining thing. It's not, because I was
Yeah, I mean,
able,
it was just the way the system was set up.
but it's something that we need to think about for the future in case anything like this ever happens again, that we need to look at how relief is paid to people like me who
Exactly.
have to wait. So that was probably the biggest impact on me, because I was out of work from March until October of that year, and the production started back into September, October, where it began, but with all of these parameters, all of these rules that you had to follow. And what had happened at that time was everyone was on lockdown, so a lot of guys that are like me were writing a lot just to keep our sanity. We were writing
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
So suddenly you've opened it back up, and then all of us are pitching all of those ideas that we were writing and producing during the time. So there's just a lot of competition. Now, fortunately, it took a few months and I'm back in the game. But it was after that year, it took me almost 6 months to a year of rebuilding and getting royalties back up to where they were, because I survived primarily off of
Royalties.
royalties. I mean, that's half of the finances that I make. But during that time, also, it gets you out of your box. It makes you look at different things that you can both make a living off of and to keep
Mm.
your sanity writing wise. One of the groups that I work with is a very popular group called Blessed Union of Souls. Back in the 90s and 2000s, they had about 8 top 10 hits. They're multi-platinum selling artists. And during that time, we did a good bit of writing. We also released a video called Smile, that if you go and Google Blessed Union of Souls Smile video. It's very interesting, because we felt like, gosh, the world's just in this weird place where everybody's walking around wearing masks and you can't see anything but the top of everyone's heads.
Mm.
We did this whole video where we had people send in videos they had taken with their phone of them just pulling their mask down and smiling. We wrote a whole song,
Amazing.
and that was kind of a cool concept because we were able to allow that to go viral to a degree. You know, everybody that sent in videos wanted, "Hey, I'm on the Blessing You Soul video."
That's
So
amazing.
that was kind of an interesting thing there. And of course, Blessed was off the road at the time when we were going into the pandemic. We had a plan for the songs that we had been writing. We had a couple of sponsorships, and they were going to go out and tour both past hits and some of the new material. And of course, pandemic took all of that away, but at the same time, it forced us into this writing area, rehoning everything, rethinking, and also writing the songs during that time, which I have been able to take and get licensed now. So that was the positive
Well,
benefit.
that's amazing. So it really helped you to pivot in different directions as well,
It
and
did.
kind of force a lot of creativity. Because I think that's also the thing is that it's easy to get, I'm not saying you were complacent, but it's easy in general to get complacent.
Yes.
And then, when you challenge with these things, it kind of forces creativity. So it's sink or swim scenario. So,
And another thing, as I think back on it with the pandemic, is Nashville is very different from other music areas, and this may have already been happening in New York or LA just because of distance of travel. You probably already had people in different rooms that were working on different aspects of song
mm,
production. But here in Nashville, it's a very communal thing because of the way our city's structured. You can easily drive to someone's studio, hang out, record, vibe off of everyone else. We were used to doing that. I was used to both working solo, but also pre-pandemic, getting in my car, going over to my friend Peter's house, who's a phenomenal bass player, him playing, then going over to my friend Klaus's place, and then us all coming together in the studio and knocking out these songs. Well, pandemic that away from us because we all couldn't come to the same room. And I think
mm,
Nashville, in particular, one of the things that we all changed and adapted to was the way we did recording, which was
yeah.
like this. I would open a Zoom session and I would have my Pro Tools session set up here in my studio. They would have theirs set up here with
Mm,
the same parameters of what we're working on, and we would be sending files back and working in real time, but over video.
mm,
So that was a change in dynamic for Nashville, how Nashville had recorded and written and produced things in the past. But another shift that I saw was a lot of my friends that were in recording wound up moving away from Nashville. But
wow.
one thing that's happened in Nashville over the course of the past 10 years is the price of living has just drastically shot up. And it's much harder from an expense level to live here now than it was 20 years ago.
Yes.
And a lot of guys were finding, well, if you're working via video, I can set up my studio anywhere in the world. So I had friends that were selling their homes here, making huge
Huge
profits off,
sums of money. Yeah, it was like
and then
uh
move to these areas in the United States where you can get like a, what some people would consider a mansion for the profit you made off your house. And they were settling down in these areas. So a lot of my friends that I would see on a, weekly basis are no longer here. I still
mm,
see them, but I see them like you and I are seeing each other. We
yeah.
see each other.
It's just a different set of circumstances.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I think it's good from the standpoint that you can work anywhere and that you can connect, but
Mm,
also there's something about being in the same room when it comes to creativity for me.
absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. So you've not only accomplished an established career in the music industry, but you also have a Juris Doctor. So can you share with us more about that and why did you decide to get into and out of law? And has this helped you within the music and entertainment industry?
It has helped me. And a lot of people assume that I got into law because, oh, you must be wanting to do entertainment law. That was never the case.
Mm,
In fact, if I were practicing law, I would, even though I have helped people now with my degree in the entertainment area, I probably would, entertainment would not be my first choice.
mm.
Why I got into it was during that transitional time between where I was getting my feet wet in TV and film and when Joe Nash and I with Watson Nash decided, hey, we're no longer touring under Watson Nash. I began going out and playing at just small events. A lot of these events were bipartisan political events. And
Oh yeah.
that comes through friends of mine that are in the political world. And it's
Mm,
kind of interesting how everything started coming together. A good buddy of mine who was a former law professor at Duke University had moved to Atlanta and he was working with a bipartisan political organization which was bringing together both Democrats and Republicans, liberals, conservatives, and finding the things they can agree on and helping revitalize certain communities. And he had asked me to come and perform at a official state sponsored dinner where they had brought in congressmen and senators from Washington, D.C. And hey, can you come in? Can you do your thing? Which my thing at the time was I was performing, but I'm also a storyteller. So I would talk between songs and just entertain and halfway MC this event. So that was one of my early moves into this area of politics, listening, watching, observing.
mm,
Started getting asked to do more events like this, but not by the same person. It's kind of strange how it happened. I wasn't
yeah.
even talking about the political thing, but I'd find myself getting invited to both play and speak at bipartisan political events. And I think maybe one thing that kind of allowed me to do this was I had, as an artist, worked with a world relief organization. I'd been a spokesperson in the past for a world relief organization that provides sponsorships for children in very underprivileged areas of the world. So maybe people were seeing that, and I'd also got involved in some civic events in the Nashville area. Nonetheless, I was being invited to these events, and I had a friend of mine uh, in politics that said, "You are a great communicator at these events. People listen to you, and I've seen how afterward, when you're off stage, people are engaging with you." And he said, "Have you ever thought about politics?" I had not. That was like
Yeah.
the furthest thing. Hey, I'm a poet, songwriter, artist. I don't want that vicious world. But what began happening, I did start meditating on this. I started praying and about this, and I started having random, well, not so randomly, because I don't think things coincidence or
No.
random, but I began having senators, congressmen, and lawyers come into my life.
Wow.
Some of them were the parents of sons and daughters who were wanting to break into the music industry. Some of them were people that I just met. I'd gotten involved with this group called the Franklin Resolves, which was a kind of town hall type group here just in Franklin, Tennessee, outside Nashville. So when things start converging like that, you have to sit back and be mindful and be prayerful and ask, why is this happening? And I
Yeah.
started noticing a lot of these politicians that I was talking to were attorneys.
Oh, okay.
And I began thinking to myself, maybe I should explore this area. Maybe I have been given these tools of communication so I can make a difference
Mm.
in these areas, in these certain political areas that I'm passionate about. Now, I'm a very non-confrontational guy. I don't like confrontation. I think that's one of the reasons that I didn't seriously at the time consider politics. But also at the same time, I think we need some bipartisan middle ground guys
Yes.
that can
Especially
extreme
now.
to where we're at right now because we're the extremes, and I think social media for a lot of that. But I began thinking, well, let's explore this, and I had about a month to prepare. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. So I began praying, and this idea of going to law school comes to me because, hey, these guys know me. They're attorneys. A lot of these senators, congressmen, they're attorneys. There must be something there. I noticed. With about a month to prepare, I went in and took the LSAT. They usually tell you, hey, take about 6 to 9 months to prepare for this thing, but
Mm-mm.
I went in kind of halfway, I think, hoping to not do well on it.
Yeah.
I wound up doing extremely well on it and getting accepted to a couple of law schools. And but for me, I didn't want to make law my thing. I didn't intend to practice.
Mm.
So I looked at a program where I could take a longer amount of time. Typically, law school's about 2 years. So I looked at, hey, can I stretch this out over 3.5, 4 year period? And I applied and wound up going to law school. Well, during this time, my first year in law school was when Trump first came into office.
Mm-mm.
I believe at the time that was the Hillary Trump uh,
Yeah.
yeah, debates, and
Boxing match.
I'm not going to get into politics here, but I
No.
will say that something changed, and just overall from both sides, everything just seemed to fast forward, get extremely bitter and poisonous from
Mm.
clashes on both sides. But here I am already in law school, doing well in law school, learning as much about constitutional law in these different areas, and all of these different things that I'm learning were just piquing my interest
Mm.
a good bit. So I followed through, and it's funny. I remember walking into one of my first exams, which was a contract exam, and getting a call from a rep of mine that, hey, CBS has just submitted your name for a nomination for an Emmy award. And I'm thinking,
Oh my God.
okay, I've got all these clashing things that are happening, but I never intended to leave music.
Yes.
This was part of my long 20 years down the road, 25-year plan. And that could be the case. I may at some point use the law degree in that area. I may use it in another area, but right now, TV and film has picked back up in a massive way and keeps me busy. I actually
Mm.
make more money at this point than I would if I were practicing law as a day by day profession. And, a lot of that has to do with where we are in the world with AI and legal Zoom and things such as
Yeah.
that. But it would not be wise for me to leave the music and
No, no, no. It's just an extension of what
at
you
this
do,
time.
basically.
But you ask, has it benefited? It has benefited because one thing that happens when you graduate from law school, everyone who has a legal question winds up calling you because
Yes.
they can get a free advice from you. Now, here's the thing: I can't offer because I haven't gone through with the licensing process. I'm not supposed to offer advice unless I offer it under the direction of an already licensed attorney. And
Yes.
so a couple of times I have had some pretty major artists that have called me. Gosh, there's one I wish I could go into, but
So continue, please.
and I can do this. So this comes back to the how has the law degree benefited me? I don't know if it's necessarily benefited me, but it's benefited others. But I had this completely omitting names here, but this brings up another interesting fact for legacy artists. I had a friend of mine that is a what's called a legacy artist. He's an artist who was extremely popular in the 1970s and 80s that had called me. And what's happening with a lot of these artists is companies that don't necessarily have anything to do with the music industry are buying out catalogs when publishing
Yeah, I've
is,
heard of this.
yeah,
People at Vanguard and BlackRock,
yeah.
which don't even get me started on those entities, but
So they're buying out artist catalogs, and they're buying them depending on the success of your catalog for huge amounts of money. So
Mm.
say you're a legacy artist, you're 65 years old. You're looking at, wow, I could sell this catalog now for a couple of $1 million and cash out. And am I really going to need X amount of dollars for the rest of my life versus off waiting long term for what this catalog can make? So a number of them want to do these deals. So I get a call from a friend of mine that's a legacy artist that had said to me, "Hey Shay, I had this attorney in New York," and he tells me the name, and I actually know the name of this entertainment attorney. And he says, "I fired him."
Oh wow.
I'm
Okay.
like, he said, "So, but I'm in the middle of trying to do this sellout to this company here for my catalog, and
Mm.
I want you to handle this for me." And I say to him, "Well, first of all, I can't handle this right now for you just as me because I'm not licensed. I'm freshly out of law school. I'd have to associate with someone." He said, "But I really want you to handle it because you were me. You sat on my side of the fence. These attorneys over here that I fired, they've never been a creative. They've never been a songwriter.
No, so they don't understand it from the other perspective.
Yeah, you know our perspective. So I want you to do this thing. Can you, is there a way you can do it?" And I said, "Well, hang on, let me make some phone calls here." I actually called my entertainment law professor
Mm.
at law school, and I, of course, graduated at this point, and I said, "Hey, I want to bring this artist to you." And I say the name. He's like, "Wait, really? How did a hillbilly like you wind up meeting know this guy?" I'm like, "Hey, well, we met at LAX one time and struck up a conversation. Then we kept in touch and became friends." So
Uh,
anyway, he's, "Yeah, but bring him. We'll figure out a way to make this work. They'll have to obviously, my professor said that he would obviously have to be the attorney representing, but I could work with him on it to the
mm,
extent that I wanted to." And that was very interesting to me because we were working out this deal, but we also uncovered at the same time that one of his songs, which, by the way, and again, not saying any names here of any songs or people involved, so we're
no,
keeping
I
this
mean that's fine. It's yeah,
conversation
you have
legit.
to be cautious.
Yeah, his song has one of his songs has been licensed in hip hop over 25,000
Wow.
times. So
Wow.
we're talking huge, huge chunks of money. But he finds out that a artist that had most recently released the song had not been given permission. to use the song. So it opens up this whole new can of worms. So it's interesting navigating that. But I've had a couple of situations like that. I've had actress friends of mine who have called me that knew that I had the entertainment background, who have asked me to, hey, can you look at this contract? Can you do this? And again, the conversation is always, I'll have to associate with someone in order to look at this. I can offer you advice in that manner. But I say that to say, I think if I ever do start practicing and looking at this stuff on my own without taking it to a fellow attorney to look over underneath, I think it could be fruitful for me in the long term, but I don't
Yeah, well, it
foresee.
gives you an advantage, Shay. I mean,
Yeah.
it definitely
But
gives you an advantage. I mean, I'm not saying you want to exploit people through your legal expertise, but it does give you an advantage.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
when I step back from it, when I was in entertainment law courses
Mm,
during law school, it was when they were educating us. I've spent 20 something years looking at these contracts that they were educating us on. And, it's no wonder that I came out making, perfect scores in the class just because I've done this for so long. So I think that if I were to practice in that area, I could be successful, but it's not something that's of interest to me right
yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
also the political side is not something right now at this moment that's of interest to me. I think on that standpoint, I'm just going to sit back in my rocking chair and watch
Yeah.
the world explode.
Yes.
Uh,
But that leads me into the next question. So obviously, and I'm actually going to combine these because there is a correlation. So obviously, technology, and you did touch on it earlier, technology and how it's impacted the music industry, and then segueing into the whole AI space because as we know, there was major strikes last year because actors. I mean, I do see where the problem resides because obviously, you know, and I think this has actually come up more and more. I don't know whether you watched the Shannon Sharp and Cat Williams interview. Very interesting. But I think there's been a lot of things around, the fact that artists are putting in all this work. And, obviously technology has impacted things. And like you mentioned earlier, just with regards to streaming and the fact that there isn't as much money being made by or for the artist as before, and now you have obviously AI which is impacting and changing the world at a rapid rate. So we saw, as I mentioned earlier, last year with the Hollywood and entertainment strikes. So from your perspective, how do you see the shifting and impacting your industry specifically? Or do you feel that it will not impact you as much? And what are your thoughts on this?
I,
Expanding from the whole royalties
yes,
and
I
streaming.
believe it will massively impact the industry. There are a few different things, few different moving parts here. And one is streaming, the other AI, how we
Yeah.
approach streaming royalties, and also how we govern AI.
Yeah, it has to be governed. It has to.
Absolutely. And right now we're just blowing past so many safeguards because it's so new and it's developing so rapidly that
Mm,
we have no stops put
no.
up right. And that's a very scary thing. But technology will always initially hurt the artist and hurt the creators. And
Yes.
I say that because we saw it with initially with Napster. We were used to this paradigm where we went out, we sold physical products, we knew how much money we were going to make off of physical products if they were successful.
Mm,
And you could, for instance, when I was a staff writer in Nashville during the early days,
mm,
I could write songs that were B-sides, so to speak, not the hit single, but just on the album, and I could make good money
Mm,
songs. Well, what happened when Napster came about, album sales in general, it can be argued they started going down. Now, some people want to say, well, they didn't really go down. Well, yeah, they actually did.
yeah.
Maybe music sales didn't go down, but album sales, full album sales did go down because you
Mm,
had people that were focusing on, I want to buy the hit single. I don't want these other songs. And you had that option. Maybe not necessarily at the beginning of Napster. The Napster created this streaming file sharing
mm,
platform. You could trade you know, full projects with people, send full projects to people and have them without paying anything. So
yeah.
yeah, that necessarily hurt, but then, how do you govern that? Okay, so we create that shifts over into Napster Music, iTunes, and now we're selling them. Okay, we're selling them, but the sales are focused on the single. They're not focused on the B sides. So a lot of the
Mm,
guys like me who were writing more of the B sides and not necessarily the hits, we're taking a hit at our income. Okay.
mm.
At the same time, streaming platforms are being developed, number of different streaming platforms. Okay, well, you're getting paid for your streaming, they say. Well, I need to go back and look at the numbers. You can look this up, but per stream is like 0.004 cents. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
it's
it's
nothing.
crazy.
You
It's
have to have
crazy.
a bazillion streams to make any money off of this. And also think about this. Most songs, at least in Nashville, have two or three riders on them. So you're now going to divide up per stream 0.00334 cents or whatever it is at the moment amongst three people,
Yeah, well, the
and
big fat cats
and
get
that's going to
richer.
be your income off of the stream.
Mm,
Now, if you look at LA, a lot of those, because producers and instrumentalists sometimes are considered songwriters on those songs, you'll have five or six names attached to a song. So per stream, the songwriter, if you're looking at the songwriter isn't making much. So the argument then goes, well, streaming platforms are benefiting artists. Well, this
no,
is
they're
where you got
not.
to be specific. Well, this is where also you have to be very specific about your terms. If there is a benefit to artists, then I can see where you could make an argument to where streaming benefits artists from the respect of gaining them an audience, getting them
Mm,
the shows, but artists and songwriters are separate creatures. Not all artists are songwriters, not all songwriters are artists. So
yeah,
you have some people that are just making their living as songwriters. They don't have show income coming.
no.
Their income is based on mechanical royalties of physical sales, and we know physical sales are down, or streaming, or some type of other thing that the song is attached to, but not
Mm,
really even as much in the sync world, because once the artist records song, oftentimes the artist is the one who owns the master, so they'll get the big upfront sync fee. So where does that leave the songwriter? If you're an artist songwriter, I can see an argument made for the platform has helped you in getting more notice to what you're doing. But in the long run, unless we change the amounts that are being
yeah,
paid,
because at the end, the executives are the people of those platforms that are making millions, and the artists are losing. So,
yes,
yeah.
and there are different arguments from both sides of the fence,
Mm,
but so we're dealing with that. That's on one respect, but combine that with AI,
mm,
and I'm going to tell you where this really started changing my perspective. I had heard of artificial intelligence over the past few years, but I didn't take the conversation that seriously. I didn't see how it could affect me as much because I always thought past tense
mm.
that you need that human emotional aspect to
Oh,
write,
100%.
to find these chord structures, to find the way these merge together. But That is true, but where we are as a consumer-based society now, a lot of people don't listen to music the way that they used to. And what AI is doing, one thing that I'll tell you a little story. I think it was 2022. I was asked to uh go do a somewhat of a unique thing. A friend of mine has developed a company to where when CEOs of different companies have their conventions in Nashville, often they'll look for something to do at the time when they're not at their conventions or talks that they're having. So my friend sets up this company to where he said, "Hey, here's something interesting you can do with these CEOs. Give them the Nashville experience, bring them into the studio and let them watch a songwriter work and take an idea from the beginning all the way to fruition with the session studios within a 5 hour time frame. We'll meet down at X studio. It's a massive studio, and come in and watch this." And my friend calls me and he says it's part of also they can approach it from the standpoint of marketing it to the leaders of these companies of how people can think outside the box. So what I was asked to do was I was asked to come into a room with a bunch of CEOs sitting in front of me with no prep work, and they're just going to start yelling out ideas to me. And whatever
Mm.
those ideas are, I'm going to form it into a hit song. We say hit song, but into a song somebody would want to listen to
Yes.
over and over. So I walk into the room and they're shouting out these ideas, and I form them into a song. Then we go into the next room where the studio players are there and the production begins. Well, while I'm standing in the other room after we've written this song, one of the CEOs of company, I guess tech company, walks up to me and
Mm.
said, "Hey, I want to tell you something. What you just did in there for an hour and a half." Said, "Look at this thing we're developing." And she gets her cell phone out, pulls up this app in like it's beta form or whatever. She said, "I want to do what you did. Give me a song title." And let's say the song title is Island. And because I had them shouting out song title, after you get the song title, tell me some things that you would, and they're shouting out colors. They're blue, green, and whatever. And somebody will shout out something obtuse, like cosmic rays. But you know, so what she does in this app is she enters song title and then these different words that I'm just on the spot trying to stump the computer. And she said, "Okay, here's your lyric." She hits it, and this thing, AI, writes first channel, chorus, bridge, chorus, boom. Within the span of 2 seconds, I have a song, and I thought, well, this is going to be crap. So
Mm.
I looked at it, and it wasn't. It was
Wow.
an actual cohesive lyric that made sense and told a story and had
Wow.
emotion to it that I'm looking at, and my jaw
Mm.
almost dropped. I thought, there's no way you need a human to do this.
No.
As she explains to me, well, what has happened, it's connected to the web, it's connected to all these databases. What it's doing is it's analyzed all the hit songs throughout modern history. And it's
Wow.
specific lines that evoke emotions, and it's looked at the words that you've given and how a person would use them in conjunction with this to invoke certain emotions, and it's written you the song, and it's given me repetition of title, it's given me all of these things that we learn in songwriting craft, and I'm stunned by this. So I thought, wow, this is something that we need to look out for. Because for one, I think it would affect the type of music that I do on a day-to-day basis more than say a radio hit,
Mm.
because TV music, you'll often be given a subject and you're moving so fast that you're not putting, you are
Yeah,
putting,
it becomes
but
very
you're
sort
not
of
giving, but you're not
impersonal.
Yeah, you're not allowed to give the 5 days of intense looking at the lyric, rewriting this, and to make it, like some songs, like you approach some songs, you're having to just move fast, make now decisions. So I could see how AI would be used by people in the TV film music industry to write quick lyrics to just get them out the door, because a lot of the songs that we write, some of them are noticed on hit shows, but a lot of them are just background to move the scene. And that's the way it is. So that was the first thing that stuck out to me. So I started looking into AI, and a publisher friend of mine, actually a song plugger, had sent over a vocal to me to ask, hey, what do you think about this vocalist that I used on this last session?
Mm.
And so I play the song. Man, this vocalist was great that I was listening to. And I say, great, what's her name? And he says, say I.
Oh my God.
And so what it was matched. They had written in the lyrics, played the melodies, and matched the vocal on top of this, and there's your singer. So okay, all right, very believable. Fast forward to even just this past weekend, my former duo partner gave me a call. He was in town on business and said, I want to come by. He's got his foot back in the music industry and he's playing me a song. I said, who's the singer on that? Same thing. And the way
Oh
that he
God.
explained to me, though, with what he was using, I mean, I was listening to a song that he and I had written, but I was listening to it with Chris Stapleton's voice on it.
Mm,
He had done was he had sang and then taken Chris Stapleton's voice in this one AI out platform, and it had analyzed his voice and inflections and Chris Stapleton's voice and inflections, and worked with frequencies and applied them over here. So you actually have Chris Stapleton's voice
mm.
singing the song. Now that's a really scary thing. I asked him, I said, well, surely we're not able to use that. He said, no, look at the legal disclaimers here. You're paying for a service. I can take this and use this and pitch this anywhere. I wouldn't, but a lot of people would.
Mm.
And
But also, I mean, at some point, there's got to be legal ramifications because even if you're at the start of this kind of technology, you know, obviously, as things get tailored or, systems are in place to monitor these types of things, you may very well at some point end up facing lawsuits or whatever
you
because,
absolutely will. And I'd be surprised if there aren't already just a huge number of lawsuits on the books
yeah, yeah,
or this type of stuff. But where it concerns me is again with AI in these different areas, we're creating the technology, but we're creating ourselves out of jobs. Think about your session singers.
yeah.
Uh,
It's no good. It's no good.
that's their living, is to come in and emulate a voice so you can pitch. I mean, the whole industry is going to be changed. And again, technology always initially hurts the creative. And you just have to stay up on it to see where it's going and how you can fit into it. But these are very scary times just because of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
rapid pace that
And
technology.
also, I mean, you hear about these things of scams where they pick up people's voices and then they phone people and say so and so's been in an accident and
Oh yeah,
something, and
absolutely.
try to scam people, and it's all AI. So it's very scary. It's
Okay, well, this is a conversation I had with my former duo partner after we were looking at this. He showed me to where you could also emulate, like say Joe Biden's voice or Donald Trump's voice or
ooh,
major.
yeah, no, it's bad
Now, I
news.
want you to think about 2024 with the presidential
Ooh,
elections.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine
Wow.
5
Wow.
days before everyone's going in to vote,
Mm,
suddenly you hear Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whoever saying the worst thing that could imagine a politician saying that would make everyone not want to vote for them. And it's put out
mm.
there. And of course, it's not them saying it, it's
It's
AI
AI. Yeah.
better. It's their voice, their vocal inflections. But in the period of time that you need to debunk that, the election has already happened and
Yeah.
people have already voted based on a false pretense.
Mm,
So that's what scares me. That's what
yeah.
really scares me. And you know, the powers that be are going to use this.
Oh, yeah. No, listen, they're so corrupt. So, so corrupt. So that leads me actually to the last two questions, because we have actually covered some of the other things in your earlier conversation. What are some of your biggest career highlights? And obviously you probably had multiple, but what is really stand out for you? And what is the biggest lessons, or one of the biggest lessons, if you could just like highlight one? And then the other is, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs or people wanting to pursue a career in the music and film and TV industry? And what legacy or how would you like to be remembered?
The biggest highlights, I will say this, working on The Young and the Restless has been a highlight, and just because that show's been on the air for 50 years now. So I grew up seeing my mom and my sister-in-law and
I mean,
everyone.
I remember watching that when we were young.
Yeah, watching that show, and it's progressed. You know, it's not the syrupy daytime soap that it was back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, now it's pretty much like a nighttime drama where the, music's emulates life. It's catchy and fun, but when I've had a number of featured songs where when it's a featured song, that's where actors and actresses are not talking, and you just hear the song and the singer singing throughout the scene. I've had a number of those on the show at this point, written for some pretty special episodes, and it's always funny to me when a fan or a relative or somebody will call and say, that they heard me on the show that day singing, or when I switch on the TV and happen to hear myself. But the other interesting thing, like with that show, is I've gained a fan base from it. You think how? Well, what's weird to me is all of these shows, if you go to their websites or music sites like TuneFind, you have people that are fans of these shows that are actively hunting out who the
Mm.
singer was or who the artist was on this
Yeah,
song.
because they like the song or they like the
They
music.
like the song, and then they're going and they're supporting, they're buying it. I've had
Mm.
people send me this is interesting. I've had people hunt me down, hunt an address to a rep or down and send me wedding programs
Oh,
where they
wow.
a song they heard of mine on TV
Mm.
in their wedding, or things like that. I think I had a funeral at one
Oh,
point.
my word. Okay.
You have all of these interesting things that makes you realize, people all over the world they may not know who you are, but they know your music, and so that's been a highlight.
I mean, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to people looking to pursue a career?
In general, I would say one key piece of advice is don't compare yourself to others, only compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Everyone's path is absolutely different. You may approach this in a manner that I never would. I went on a long journey of many pivots to get to the point that I am right now. But that's just a general overarching thing to keep in the back of your mind while you're working toward that goal. And another general overarching thing that you need to do is to not only work on your craft, but work on your people skills, because so much of your success depends on how you are going to relate to other people. You may be the most absolutely talented, most talented person in the world,
Mm.
but people don't want to be around you if you seem more that you're more about yourself than about the needs of the project. Then people
Yes.
want to work with you, and that kind of walks into for TV and film specifically, depending on the shows that you want to have your music on, do your research. Don't make it about you. It doesn't matter if you have what you think is the greatest song in the world and your favorite TV show is Yellowstone and you think
Yeah, exactly.
that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You need to research the show, research the vibe, the feel of the music, and also down to the technical side of whatever show it is.
Mm.
Listen to the themes that some of the background songs are are using. Oftentimes, one thing that many Nashville writers do, and this seems like a natural thing to do because we're taught as songwriters and staff writers to be very picturesque, to be very story oriented, but that's not what you do with TV and film.
Yeah.
TV and film is the opposite of that. You want to capture an emotion, so you want to be more vague. In
Yes.
vague, you have to use certain words that are not going to detract from dialogue. Think about, I want to set up the scene or move the scene along. So that plays into educating yourself on what the show's needs are. You have to do a lot of listening.
Yes.
So
And then
those
what legacy would you like to leave, Shay? I mean, how would you like to be remembered?
That is probably one of the toughest ones for me. I think all of us musicians and artists, songwriters want to leave behind something that people are going to remember and listen to after we're gone. But I do, and this is after many years, I do want to leave behind a legacy that when you listen to my meaningful songs, you feel love, you feel loved, you feel hope,
Mm.
you you
And you're
feel
inspired. You're inspired.
yeah. And of course, with TV and film, I'm asked to write all different types of music. I'm asked to write antisocial music. I'm asked to write the depressive music. I'm asked to write screamo music. But if you really dig into songs of mine, like if you type in my name on Spotify or any of these listening platforms, Pandora, a lot of my songs are focused on love and hope, and a lot of them have a very positive feel to
Mm.
them. I hope that in the end is what I leave behind, something that's going
Yes.
to point you to something beyond yourself, something that's going to point you to God, something that's going to point you to moving forward and to realizing that this isn't all there is. There's a bigger picture, and stay positive and be the best that you can in this life.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Shay, for your time. So if people want to reach out to you or connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
Instagram is probably one.
The best one.
Of course, I have my website.
I know
It
you're on LinkedIn
yeah,
as well.
yeah. If you go to my website, there are links to different social media sites.
Okay.
I'm terrible about checking email, to be quite honest with
Mm.
you. If you message me, probably the platform that I'm on the most is Instagram. I actually get a lot of business through Instagram.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
But yeah, you can Google my name and it'll pull up the platforms you can find me on, and just, you know, send me a message and you can find me there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to see where you are in your journey.
Would love to. Thanks so much for this interview. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much.
Thanks.